So now that that basics is out of the way, you can still make monetary claims. You can still qualify for monetary damages. But what they're telling you is when they say you've stated no claim upon which relief can be granted, is one, you bring in monetary damages under conditions whereby you haven't shown that any law says that this amount can be given to you. That is the problem, or at least one of the problems, besides joining the proper parties and your rules of evidence. Maybe some other little subtleties here and there. Because all that position that they're holding, especially if you're showing a quote-unquote public official, they have created a promise to uphold the Constitution called an oath of office. Believe it or not, oath of office, that promise is a promissory note. And a lot of people hear about notary protest. But you just don't do notary protest just because you hear, oh, I have to send them this letter, and then they owe me money, and then I have to go to the public court. That's a misconception. Magic doesn't work like that. Even behind every magic, there's a reason behind it. You just don't do it and hope something just randomly pops up. There are laws governing notary protest. And I think this is where many people get lost. They hear notary protest, they hear administrative process, this and that. There's no law instructing them that, hey, this is why you're doing what you're doing, and this is the basis to it. The basis is the fact that they swore an oath to it and everybody is obligated to that contract. We hear, oh yeah, they function in honor, dishonor, this and that, to do this, and okay. What is the first proof that they've dishonored it? And dishonored what? Constitution. Proof is your contract. Their oath is a promise to perform. And if they violated one of those prohibitory aspects, one of those commandments of that Constitution, then they're in dishonor. And you just can't merely say they are, you have to prove they are. They are in dishonor. And it's by virtue of that that you bring something called monetary damages. Monetary damages are the same as bill of exchange. And that is intertwined into the UCC. Each state has a corresponding aspect of the UCC. Whatever state you're in, sorry, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure you can find it. You need some help finding it, let me know. But in Illinois, it is at Public Act 95-895. And then the subsequent ones that are, that follow that. And you would always see the trail. And it's codified as 810 ILCS 5. This act may be cited as Uniform Commercial Code. Just because you use the Constitution does not mean you cannot engage in commerce. In fact, if and when you're engaging in commerce, you must use the Constitution, because that is the backbone that will protect you. That's the backbone that will serve as a guide to what you're doing. Don't separate it. They're already doing that for you. That's the reason why you and I have to spend all this time studying all these things to really get small amounts over time. Don't keep separating it. Understand that everything is one. There's diversity, but everything is one. Just as there's diversity of citizenship, there's diversity of law. And despite that diversity, everything always comes together one way or the other, because the principles behind it are all the same. So use the Constitution and use the UCC. But know the delineation of these things. Don't be delusional with yourself. Don't think some magic trick is going to happen without you applying yourself. So in this specific situation, we're referring to the notary protest. The notary protest is guided, or at least the guidelines of it is given to you in the UCC. But the foundation is based on the rights and obligations of contract there in the Constitution. Their oath is their promise to perform. When they don't perform it, or shall I say their oath is a promise to perform in accordance to the stipulation, the commandments, and the prohibitions of the Constitution. And if they don't perform, they're in dishonor. You have so much power that nobody can create any laws to limit you, to tell you this is when they're in dishonor and this is the amount that they're going to have to give you. You have that power. So you have to create it. But remember, two things are always constant in whatever you do: good faith and being reasonable. Whatever that means to you, look it up, do some self-reflection on it. Just know good faith and being reasonable is a necessity. Evidence of dishonor. Remember, rules of evidence is how you win. Within the UCC, it is letting you know the following are admissible evidence and creates a presumption of dishonor and of any notice of dishonor stated. A document regular in form as provided in subsection B, which purports to be a protest. What is a protest? It says a protest is a certificate of dishonor made by a United States consul or vice consul or a notary public or other persons, in this case a notary public, or the persons authorized to administer oaths by law. You don't always have to use a notary for a protest. So the terminology is really not notary protest, it's just protest or verification of protest, or whatever you want to call it, but just use the word protest. That's another misconception. It's not notary protest, because it gives you the list of the capacities that can actually create that order, that court order. It says a protest is a certificate of dishonor made by a United States consul or vice consul or a notary public or other person authorized to administer oaths by law and in the Constitution or any other legislation that abides in our, in fact, Constitution. By law of the place, your state, where dishonor occurred, the state where it occurred. And of course, if you have another notary that, that knows about this and is going to do such a thing, then you can always authenticate that notary certificate and use full faith and credit clause. It goes on to say it may be made upon information satisfactory to that person. One of these capacities. The protest must identify. It's telling you this is what you need right here to make that money that you all want. When it comes to saying, hey, they violated my Constitution and secured rights, so they should pay this amount. This is it right here. The protest must identify the instrument and certify either that presentment has been made or not made, the reason why it was not made, and that the instrument has been dishonored by non-acceptance or non-payment. Meaning, the protest itself is foundationally based on a pre-existing commandment or pre-existing prohibition that you are now bringing to light. that you are bringing to life. Say the Constitution is dead because you're not enforcing it. And this is how you enforce it through private contracts. Create the terms and conditions, private contracts. And you say, based on your promise to perform, based on this law that you have promised and bound yourself to, aka an oath, you didn't do this. So give me this amount because this is the actual amount that I lost, and that I want you to compensate me for this amount of time that I've spent doing this. And whether it's a loss of consortium you're trying to claim, and in case of loss of consortium, you have to get the other party to create a witness affidavit that, yep, I've lost some emotional contact with this man or woman, or our relationship was damaged because this guy was trespassed against, and because this guy didn't follow his oath. That's how you can bring claims of loss of consortium. You just can't say, oh, well, my consort, my wife, my friend, my family members have, my relationship with them has been damaged because of this, and expect that to pass. No, they have to bring an affidavit as a proof, evidence. Whatever it is, you bring those in and say, because of that, because of your actions, these things have occurred. And then maybe there'll be another video of actual damages, because the actual damages you have to show proof. So, for example, you were going somewhere and somebody stopped you from going there, and you planned to actually make about $10,000 from the deal that you were gonna make. But well, since it's business, first come first serve, you gotta be professional. You didn't make it. Why? Because this man or woman denied your constitutionally or trespassing your constitutionally secured right. Well, then create evidence or show evidence that, well, because I was hindered over here, I wasn't able to get here and make this amount. And here's my contract that I had signed with this entity to say, hey, I have to perform this amount of task and then I'll make 10K. But since I was stuck over here with this asshole, I couldn't make this 10K, which is, look, this contract that I had with them to perform. Or this trust minute that says, hey, look, I'm supposed to do this during this time, and this is worth this much. And since you've trespassed and dishonored that oath you've taken because you were prohibited from doing this to begin with, so here's an actual evidence of the damage that I have lost. So now give me back my money. This is actual damage. That's an example, but that might be just a whole nother thing. But nonetheless, it gives you the definition of what a protest is. Letting you know it's basically an order that's saying, hey, you've done this based on this terms and condition. You have an opportunity to fix it, and you haven't. So therefore, here's this order, because you've been in dishonor. You've been in dishonor. And you know what the cool part is? Just like court and satisfaction, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Even if they did not accept it, meaning you did a protest, you did a presentment. Presentment is basically a bit of exchange with a monetary value, something of monetary value. You did that and they failed to accept it. The fact that you make that claim and created a dispute still makes them liable. You have stated a claim. So they can refuse it all they want, so long, just assuming you know what you're doing and you know how to bring evidence in, and that you're doing things in good faith, and you're brief, you're not long-winded, and the amount is reasonable. Even if they don't accept it, that is still categorized as dishonor. So you always have the upper hand. You just have to know what you're doing. So it defined what a protest is. But then let's take it a little bit further. Like the word bill of exchange. This is Bouvier's. It tells you in contract, meaning right off the bat it's letting you know this is contract law. This is rights and obligation of contract that you're supposed to enforce, because no one else can do it for you. They don't have the power to do so, because you have that power. No one else can. Although when it comes to their administration of their constructive trust, they will create contracts for you, because then it favors them to construe you as a minor. But if you're trying to do something that favors you, then yeah, you have to create yours. So in contracts, a notarial act like a public act, this is a type of law. Notarial act made for want of payment of a promissory note, or for want of acceptance or payment of a bill of exchange. What is a bill of exchange? A bill of exchange is a written order, like a court order, from one person to another, directing the person to whom it is addressed to pay to a third party, then the notary telling the tortfeasor to compensate you a sum of money therein named you. Are you seeing it now? So a promissory note is a notarial act made for want of payment. And the terms and conditions have been set, and they haven't done it. So now the notary is putting in that, okay, now go ahead. You not responded to this thing. Guys stipulated this conditions based on this substantive law that we're bound by, and he has given you a presentment of that amount. But you either just look the other way without rebutting it. A lot of people familiar with one of the maxims of commerce, an unrebutted affidavit is truth. Contract is the law. Yet they're missing this. In which it is declared that all parties to such instrument will be held responsible to the holder for all damages. See that? This is how you enforce the Constitution, at least one of the ways that you enforce the Constitution. When it comes to you making demand for money,